You're watching Euronews now. I'm Takumbo Silako with your top stories. Ukraine estimates it's losing up to 200 soldiers a day as fierce fighting continues across its eastern regions. After US Capitol Police describe being overrun by pro-Trump rioters during the congressional hearing into the January 6th insurrection, we'll ask how much democracy is in danger. Also in the programme, next week sees the start of the Annecy Animation Festival. We'll take a sneak look at the competition.
The front in eastern Ukraine is holding, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. But the fighting is so close, more and more residents of Lysychansk, adjacent to Severodonetsk, are deciding to leave.
Why am I leaving? Because they broke my house. I left everything to the neighbours, my cats even. It's a pity about the garden. I planted everything there, and it's well maintained. Now there is more shelling. There are a lot of broken houses. Yesterday many people left. I am leaving with my mother. She is 80. Now we are going to the city of Dnipro.
The Ukrainian authorities are trying to prevent civilians from ending up behind enemy lines.
It is important to evacuate because now we face shelling from all sides, and life is the most important thing, the most valuable thing for a person.
The Ukrainian government maintains its focus on the Donbass, but it's clear that Russia could at any time reopen closed fronts to divert Ukrainian forces from the Eastern Front.
Even now, during this interview, we hear the airstrike siren, and it shows that we are not in a peaceful city, and the war is not over yet. We understand that any place in Ukraine can be a target for rocket shellings, including Kyiv.
Amid celebrations for the 350th anniversary of Peter the Great, Putin has compared his war in Ukraine to the Tsar's legacy.
Peter the Great led the war for 21 years. One could say he was fighting with Sweden trying to tear away some parts. He wasn't, though. He was returning the land. Returning and consolidating land, that's what he was doing. Now it seems that it is our turn for returning and consolidating.
Putin wants to be seen as Peter the Great style, the modernizer, even though he might go down in history as a cruel and unpredictable ruler.
The January 6th Select Committee began its hearing with one overarching conclusion about the violence witnessed at Washington's Capitol Hill. It was carefully planned and orchestrated. The chairman of the panel, Bernie Thompson, accused former President Donald Trump of an attempted coup, whose motive threatened the democratic transfer of power after the 2020 presidential election. Vice Chair Lizzie Cheney also released footage of some key testimonies from some of those working closest to Trump.
And the Vice President's counsel as the violent attack on Congress was underway.
One jaw-dropping account was from former Attorney General William Barr, who insisted to Trump to stop touting that the election was rigged. A video of Ivanka Trump's testimony was also released, in which she said she believed Barr when he said there was insufficient evidence of election fraud. At the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, the elected US President Joe Biden says that the January 6 rioters conducted a clear, flagrant violation of the Constitution and broke the law. The congressional panel hearing will resume next week.
What effect is the war in Ukraine having on Eastern Europe? And what does it mean for the region's security? Well, that's the focus of the Bucharest 9 summit being held in the Romanian capital today. Claudio Pupo from our sister channel, Euronews Romania, has this report.
The agenda of the summit is to prepare the most important decisions of the NATO summit to be held at the end of this month in Madrid, and will address as a matter of priority the consequences of Russia's illegal military aggression against Ukraine and the response alliance to them. In this context, the summit should emphasize the need to strengthen the position of defense on the eastern flank in a balanced and unified manner, more precisely from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Now, the Bucharest 9 or B9 format is an initiative launched by the Romanian presidency behind me and the Polish presidency with the participation of the NATO member states on the alliance's eastern flank. We are talking about Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia and our country. On the other hand, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg will attend the B9 summit, but remotely, after being diagnosed with shingles, quoting a NATO official. Claudiu Popa, Euronews Romania.
US President Joe Biden and Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro spoke for the first time at the Los Angeles Convention Center, where Biden has been hosting a week-long summit of leaders. The Brazilian leader, who showed interest in cooperating towards a way out of the conflict in Ukraine, is running for a second term at home, but has been casting doubt on the credibility of his country's elections.
The Copenhagen Democracy Summit draws to a close today, and the fight against authoritarian forces has been the main talking point. The war in Ukraine has led to a strengthening of democratic alliances around the world, but how can that be transformed into action, especially when it comes to defending the country? Well, the President of the European Parliament, Roberto Metsola, and the former US President Barack Obama are among today's speakers. But now let's speak to Jonas Perello-Plesner. He's Executive Director of the Alliance for Democracy's Foundation. Thanks for taking time to speak to us here at the programme. At the beginning of this year, some were saying that democracy was dead. That seems to have been reversed now. Would you say those previous reports have been exaggerated?
I do. I think what we're seeing today at our summit is really the whole democratic world coming together to defend Ukraine. You could see it in the colors that I'm wearing. You could see it in the speeches we have, as you mentioned, from President Zelensky as well, the former President Obama, and other figures that will be joining us today. So there's really a sort of rallying behind Ukraine, not just seeing it as Ukraine's own fight, but seeing it as a sort of global fight for their democracy.
What would you say to people saying, you've just got like-minded people coming together in a room, this is just a glorified talking shop?
No, of course, you can always argue that, but we bring optimism. I mean, I think that's part of the democratic resurgence, is really also the optimism that people believe in it. We also have with us a lot of democracy activists from all over the world. They're here also to say, I mean, we can still make it happen, and not just in Ukraine, but also elsewhere. So I think that's really the main message we all carry.
So concretely then, what steps are you looking to bring into action in order to turn the tide, because you're really facing a huge battle for influence here?
Well, one, believe in the grassroots, in the people. I mean, people don't take to the streets because they want more authoritarianism. People take to the streets because they want more freedom. So in that sense, there's still that foundation to keep building on. And then we've also tried throughout the day here to sort of present practical proposals. For example, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, our chairman and founder, the former NATO Secretary General, launched a proposal for an economic Article 5 against authoritarian economic version as a way of sort of defending countries like Lithuania, Australia, that by China has been sort of subjected to economic bullying. So we also try to make it really practical of what can democracies do more together for Ukraine, but also sort of globally.
Give us an example then. You mentioned China there, and as well as the economic battle, the sort of the bullying, some might say, that it's been exerting towards the southern countries of the world. Russia, of course, we've clearly identified. We're talking on a daily basis. Earlier on in the program, we were only hearing from Vladimir Putin, making it clear that he's not ready to give up at all or wedge.
No, and actually we did some polling on some of this, what's called the Democracy Perception Index that we publish yearly at the summit. We also asked the China question. What if China were to invade Taiwan? Would you sort of support that your country then cut economic ties with China as well? And that actually shows, again, a really strong amount of countries, or at least citizens in those countries, that would be willing to do that, really cutting China off from global trade if they were to sort of follow in Russia's footsteps and attack democratic Taiwan.
You're watching Euronews now. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back in a few moments.